I've never missed an HOA payment, not once, but that didn't stop them from slapping me with an $8,500 bill in late fees and threatening to put a lien on my house if I didn't pay up. That's when I did what I do best. I opened Excel and opened hell. Yeah, buckle in, because this is the story of how one HOA president thought she could use fake fines to line her own pockets, and how she learned the hard way that messing with a retired forensic accountant is a terrible idea. A little context. I've lived in my home for 12 years. It's a quiet neighborhood built in the late 90s with all the typical HOA trappings, perfect lawns, mailbox regulations, and a newsletter that's 90% dog poop complaints. I'm not a troublemaker. Never have been. I mow my lawn, I don't throw parties, and I pay my dues on time, every quarter, through automatic payments. Never missed one. So imagine my surprise when I get a letter from the HOA president, Karen, and yes, that's her actual name, informing me that I supposedly owe $8,534.28 in accrued late fees and administrative charges. Attached was a spreadsheet with made-up numbers in the kind of formatting that made my left eye twitch. We've attempted to contact you several times, the letter claimed. Failure to comply within 14 days will result in legal action and potential property lien. I thought it had to be a mistake, a clerical error. Maybe someone fat-fingered a payment ID? Nope, I called the HOA office the next morning. Karen picked up, sounding exactly like someone who spends too much time drinking Diet Coke through a straw and yelling at teenagers for walking too fast. I politely asked for clarification. She told me, and I quote, "Our records are final. If you've lost your receipts, that's not the board's fault." Receipts? Lady, I could reconstruct the Pentagon's budget from scratch with the documentation I keep. But I stayed calm. I said I'd send over my bank statements. She cut me off and said, "It's not our job to audit your bank account. Pay or prepare for consequences." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about a fee. This was about her. What Karen didn't realize was that before I retired, I spent 35 years as a forensic accountant. I've helped federal investigators untangle embezzlement cases so complicated, they made Wall Street look like Monopoly. And now I had a fresh pot of coffee, a highlighter, and a very interesting mystery in front of me. So I started digging. I pulled every HOA transaction I'd made for the past 12 years. Every check, every ACH transfer, every confirmation email. Then I went to the HOA's public filings. You'd be amazed at what people don't realize is legally accessible. Annual budgets, vendor contracts, meeting minutes, and something didn't add up. The numbers were bloated. Administrative costs had tripled in 2 years. Landscaping invoices were vague, round numbers, often in BAM, and a $14,000 line item labeled community engagement events. I don't remember any barbecues, do you? It was a pattern, and I'd seen it before. Just not in a cul-de-sac. Turns out I wasn't the only one getting these fake fee letters. Over the next week, I reached out to a few neighbors. Quiet folks, some in their 70s, some recently widowed. People who wouldn't question a stern-looking envelope stamped urgent HOA action required. 2 had already paid. Others were scared. One woman said she had a lien put on her home last year after missing dues she swore she'd paid. Another was forced onto a payment plan with interest, handled directly by Karen's friend at a private collections company. And that's when I realized this wasn't mismanagement. This was a racket. Karen wasn't just inventing fees. She was building a quiet little empire, one $200 processing charge at a time. You know the funny thing about numbers? They don't lie, but people sure do. And Karen, she was lying through her bleached teeth, hiding behind spreadsheets she thought no one would bother to check. Unfortunately for her, she'd picked a fight with the one person in the entire neighborhood who reads footnotes for fun. I started with the HOA's annual budget. It wasn't hard to get. HOAs are legally required to provide it to any homeowner upon request. Karen stalled at first, claiming she had to get it from the treasurer, but I knew that was smoke. 2 days later, I had the PDF, and that's when the first alarm bell rang. Under community engagement, there was a $14,072 expense listed for a neighborhood-wide BBQ plus family fun day. Only problem? That never happened. I asked around. No one remembered a barbecue, no inflatable bounce house. No hot dogs, no music, not even a damn bag of potato chips. But here's the kicker. The event was allegedly held during a month where the entire town was under weather lockdown from a tropical storm. I double-checked the dates. She had logged the BBQ under the same week our garbage pickup got delayed due to flooding. Now, unless Karen was hosting a pig roast on a paddleboard, something stank. And it wasn't the brisket. I kept digging. Another major expense, $26,150, was paid out to a company listed as Clean Sweep Landscaping LLC over the course of the year. I Googled the name. Nothing. No website, no business license, no listing with the state contractor registry. I checked local tax filings. Still nothing. Then I ran the company's address, which was listed on the invoice. Guess what came up? A P.O. box in the same strip mall as Karen's nail salon. You can't make this stuff up. By now, I had 3 clear signs of fraud. 1, fake events billed to the HOA. 2, non-existent vendors receiving big checks. 3, residents being charged phony late fees with no access to their payment records. So I reached out to an old contact, someone I used to audit medical fraud cases with back in the day, just to confirm I wasn't going off the rails. He took one look at the documents and said, "You've got a classic laundering setup, petty but effective. She's funneling HOA dues into shell charges and collecting cash through friends or dummy accounts." He also said, "You know you can take this to court or blow it up at the next meeting." I smiled. "Oh, I've got something better in mind. There's a small shopping center about 2 miles from our neighborhood. One of those aging strip malls with a dry cleaner, vape shop, and a dusty ATM next to a donut place that only takes cash." Guess who showed up there every month after dues collection day? Karen. I know this because I installed a trail camera in my dashboard and parked across the street for 2 weekends. Retirement has its perks. I matched 3 separate timestamps of Karen withdrawing large sums of cash on HOA check deposit days. Each withdrawal just under $10,000, conveniently below the threshold that would trigger mandatory federal reporting. Oh yeah, she was clever, but not clever enough. Just to be sure, I requested my own HOA payment records per California Civil Code Section 5205. Karen replied with a 3-sentence email. "Due to a recent system transition, some records are no longer accessible. We suggest paying the fee in full to avoid further penalties." That sealed it. Not only was she manufacturing debts, she was destroying evidence. And that, my friends, is called fraudulent concealment. There's a certain sound you hear when a room full of polite neighbors suddenly realizes they've been conned. It's not yelling, it's silence. A deep, tight silence, like everyone just inhaled at the same time and forgot how to exhale. That was the sound when I finished laying out the evidence. And Karen? She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole and couldn't decide whether to spit or choke. Let me take you back. The room was packed, folding chairs filled, some folks standing along the wall. More people than I'd ever seen show up for anything HOA related, probably since the great trash bin repositioning debate of 2019. Karen walked in wearing a beige pantsuit and a forced smile. She looked confident, unbothered. She shouldn't have been. She started with the usual fluff. "Thank you all for being active community members. We're here tonight to review budget updates, discuss our community beautification plan, and handle a few outstanding payment matters." Yeah, about that. "Excuse me," I said, standing up. "Before we move on to payment issues, I have some material the community might want to see." Karen squinted at me. "This isn't the time for resident commentary. We'll have open Q&A after." "No," I said, calm and direct. "This isn't commentary, it's evidence. And it concerns financial mismanagement by the board." A murmur went through the room. I walked to the projector, pulled out my flash drive. Karen's smile twitched. "This is highly irregular," she snapped. I clicked play. A line item from the HOA budget. Community event. BBQ and Family Fun Day. $14,072. Then a screenshot of the weather report that week. Severe storm warnings. Citywide event cancellations. Then a neighborhood Facebook post. "Anyone else still without power? Ours has been out for 48 hours. And then the final slide. A photo of the empty clubhouse that day. Locked. Lights off. Someone in the back mumbled, "I thought I missed it." Clean Sweep Landscaping LLC, $26,850 in annual charges. Then, business lookup results. No such company registered in state. Then, photo of the listed address, a post office box in a rundown strip mall. Then, a Google Street View shot of Karen's nail salon right across the hallway. Now the murmuring turned into outright noise. Wait, what? She owns that salon. Is this a joke? Trail camera photos of Karen withdrawing cash from an ATM 2 blocks away from her listed business address. Same days as HOA deposit days. All withdrawals were just under $10,000. Multiple dates. Same ATM, same Karen. A spreadsheet with names blurred, dates visible. Rows of residents charged late fees on days they had bank statements proving payment. I included mine too, and 3 others who gave permission. I finished with a clean, crisp slide. California Civil Code, or 5230, misappropriation of HOA funds is grounds for civil penalties and criminal charges. Then I turned to the room. This is not a mistake. It's not sloppy bookkeeping. It's fraud, and it's theft. And every person in this room deserves better than to be treated like a piggy bank for someone's side hustle. The room erupted. Karen stood up, red-faced. That's all circumstantial. You're twisting things. You're not even on the board. No, I said, but I've brought someone who is. That's when Greg stood up. Greg, the quiet board member, retired school principal, beloved in the neighborhood. He cleared his throat. I'd like to motion for an immediate vote to remove Karen as president, pending full investigation. Cheers. Hands shot up. People clapped. Someone even shouted, "Take her clipboard." Karen looked like she might explode. This is slander. This is harassment. You'll regret this. I smiled. Actually, I'll enjoy it. Karen stormed out before the vote was counted. She didn't have to wait for the result. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president and suspend her from all committee involvement pending investigation. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the city's Department of Consumer Affairs and submitted all documents to a local HOA watchdog group. 2 weeks later, a county investigator contacted me. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd submitted a complaint. Karen had been HOA president at another neighborhood, 2 towns over, 6 years ago. That HOA dissolved due to financial irregularities. Go figure. With Karen gone, things started to change. The bogus late fees were canceled. The landscaping contract was open for competitive bids, and actual companies applied. Greg was voted interim president, and I was asked to join the Finance Oversight Committee. I politely declined. Once was enough. The clubhouse got reopened. We hosted our first real barbecue, and guess what? It cost less than $900. No mystery vendors. No weather warnings, just neighbors, laughing, talking. And yes, someone brought up the ATM slides like they were the Zapruder film. So yeah, Karen tried to make $8,500 appear out of thin air, but instead of paying it, I made her disappear. And if you think this was wild, wait till you hear what Karen did next. Because believe it or not, she didn't go quietly, not after I handed her over to the county. Let's just say the next chapter involves a real estate listing, a suspicious GoFundMe, and a very uncomfortable news crew interview. Some people, when they get caught red-handed, lay low. They get quiet. They lawyer up. They move to Florida and take up paddleboarding. But not Karen. Karen tried to clear her name, publicly, and in doing so, she accidentally submitted an application for public humiliation, National Edition. Let me walk you through how our HOA scandal turned into a local news segment, a failed GoFundMe, and one truly iconic moment of live TV meltdown. About a month after the HOA board removed her and referred everything to the county, Karen went dark. Her porch light stayed off. Her front lawn started to brown. The only activity was a steady stream of envelopes with official government seals being delivered to her mailbox. We figured she'd moved away in shame, but no. Karen was plotting her comeback. It started with a post in the neighborhood Facebook group. Enough lies. I'm going live this Sunday at 7 p.m. and to tell my side of the story. HOA corruption goes both ways, and the real thief hasn't been exposed. Yet. She included a blurry selfie with what appeared to be a stack of receipts in a smoking gun folder that looked suspiciously like an old manila envelope from Office Depot. The post got 94 comments, mostly popcorn gifs. Turns out, the scandal had already caught the eye of a local ABC affiliate. They'd been tipped off by a neighbor, not me, but I have theories, that a former HOA president had been accused of embezzling funds and was threatening to go public with counter allegations. Apparently, a good HOA feud is irresistible to small market TV, so they reached out to Karen. And Karen, being Karen, said, "I'd be happy to speak on camera. I have nothing to hide." Famous last words. They shot the interview in Karen's living room. She staged it carefully. Fresh flowers on the table, her HOA president plaque behind her, and a prominently displayed American flag just slightly out of frame so it looked unintentional. But her composure? Not so carefully managed. Here's a rough transcript of how it went. Reporter, "Karen, you're accused of misusing over $50,000 in HOA funds. How do you respond?" Karen, "I was acting in the best interest of the community. Those were discretionary expenses." Reporter, "Can you explain the $14,000 charge for a BBQ that never happened?" Karen, "We had to cancel last minute due to weather, but the deposit was non-refundable. The vendor was out of state." Reporter, "You mean the vendor that doesn't exist in any public business registry?" Karen, visibly sweating, "That depends on your definition of registry." During editing, the news team ran footage from the HOA meeting I spoke at. They showed the projector slides, ghost vendors, ATM withdrawals and all. They blurred faces, but it was clear who was who. Karen's lawyer, yes, she had one, reportedly begged the station not to air it. They aired it anyway. It ran as the lead story that Friday night. HOA horror story, local president accused of embezzlement and fake fees. Karen's side of the story was reduced to a 12-second clip of her saying, "Registry is a loose term." Twitter, well, local Facebook, had a field day. A few days later, someone, Karen or her cousin, started a GoFundMe titled, "Help Karen Fight HOA Corruption and Legal Abuse." The goal? $25,000 for legal defense and truth outreach. The reward tiers were creative. $50, a personalized thank you card from Karen. $100, exclusive HOA watchdog content. $500, a private Zoom Q&A with Karen herself. It raised $143. One donation came from a neighbor under the name Greg's BBQ Fund. Yes, that Greg. It was taken down within a week after several complaints flagged it for misleading legal claims. Behind the scenes, things were moving fast. Karen had officially been charged by the county with misappropriation of funds, falsifying financial records, and intimidating HOA members for personal gain. Her hearing was scheduled for early fall. And no, this wasn't some slap on the wrist hearing. The county took it seriously, especially after my documentation and the 7 sworn statements submitted by neighbors. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea, but Karen insisted on fighting it. She said she'd clear her name in court. While Karen waged her one-woman war on logic, we got busy fixing things. A real landscaping company was hired, with receipts, contracts, and plans that actually showed up. We held a real community event, with burgers, bounce houses, and a raffle that raised money for the local food bank. The board voted to implement a financial transparency portal online, so residents could track every penny of dues in real time. And the biggest twist? I was voted onto the board, reluctantly but unanimously. Greg said, "If you can take down Karen, you can probably handle this budget." Karen put her house up for sale. The listing was ambitious. Charming home in a high-demand HOA neighborhood lovingly maintained by a community-minded owner. It sat on the market for 47 days. Then the price dropped $50,000. She eventually sold it to a young couple from Oregon. They asked me about the HOA when we met. I said, "It's a great place, as long as nobody thinks they're queen of the cul-de-sac." They laughed. We grilled burgers together that weekend. You ever see someone so committed to their own version of reality? They walk face first into a brick wall made of facts. That was Karen. After the news segment, the failed GoFundMe, and the slow, sad sale of her house, most people assumed she'd disappear quietly and wait for the court date. But no, Karen doubled down. She started mailing anonymous flyers around town, printed on cheap pink paper, no return address. They were stuffed in mailboxes, slipped under doors, even taped to stop signs. The headline? Corruption inside the HOA board. Who's really guilty? Spoiler alert, she thought it was me. The flyers were full of gems, accusing me of planting fake vendors to frame her. Sure, Karen, I invented a landscaping company and put it across from your nail salon. Claiming Greg, the retired principal, was a deep state operative. For what purpose? Mowing secrets? And my personal favorite, alleging that the community barbecue was real but only open to a secret HOA inner circle. Let me tell you something. Greg burns hot dogs like it's his job. If there was a secret cookout, I promise he didn't cater it. The neighborhood wasn't fooled. One neighbor stuck a flyer back in Karen's mailbox with a sticky note that said, "Nice font choice. Very 2006. Then came the podcast. That's right, Karen launched a podcast. On YouTube, one camera, dim living room lighting, lots of heavy sighing and swirly PowerPoint transitions. Episode 1, the HOA Industrial Complex, What They're Not Telling You. She talked for 42 minutes straight about bylaws, vendettas, and how the IRS once looked into me. They didn't. At one point, she held up a blurry photo of me from the HOA meeting and said, "This man is dangerous. He understands how to manipulate documents." Lady, I'm dangerous with a spreadsheet, sure, but not in the way you're thinking. The video got 38 views. One comment said, "Are you okay, ma'am? Blink twice if you're being held hostage by a printer." And then it was time. Superior Court, 9:30 a.m. Depton 12, Karen showed up in a beige suit, heels slightly too high, dragging a plastic rolling crate full of papers. Her attorney looked like he aged 10 years since our last sighting. The courtroom was mostly empty, just a few neighbors, a local reporter, and me. And let me tell you, I wasn't nervous. Not because I'm cocky, but because truth is oddly relaxing when you've documented everything. Bank records? Check. Vendor filings? Check. Camera footage? Oh, check. The county prosecutor was surgical. He didn't grandstand. He didn't yell. He just showed receipts. Photos of ATM withdrawals under $10,000 after every HOA dues collection cycle. Vendor invoices from non-existent companies, signed in Karen's handwriting. HOA emails edited with revised dates that didn't match server logs, and at least 12 residents who submitted proof of paying dues before being fined late fees. It was calm, methodical, and brutal. Karen sat there, jaw tightening every minute. Her defense? She claimed it was bad bookkeeping and that she relied on a former assistant who had since moved to Arizona. Funny how that assistant only existed on paper. But the final nail? An email Karen had sent to herself, altering invoice records. She backdated it using an editing tool, but forgot to change the timestamp metadata in the file properties. The prosecution pulled it up on screen and said, "Karen, can you explain why this email, supposedly sent in 2021, shows a last edited date of March 3rd, 2023? Silence. Then Karen said, "I might have opened the file to check formatting." Judge raised an eyebrow. "You checked formatting 2 years later, during an active investigation?" Karen said nothing. It took the judge less than a week. Guilty of fraudulent misuse of community funds, tampering with financial records, civil violations of HOA fiduciary duties. She was ordered to pay $41,000 in restitution to the HOA, serve 18 months of probation, including 250 hours of community service, and was permanently barred from holding any position in any HOA or community board in the state. Greg had a celebratory root beer float that day. I brought banana bread to the next board meeting. It was quiet, peaceful, like a neighborhood should be. We didn't throw a party when it was over. We planted a tree, a flowering dogwood right outside the clubhouse with a little plaque. "In memory of accountability, may it always grow here." Karen moved away, finally. No forwarding address. Her house sold to a retired couple who liked jazz and didn't care about power dynamics or printer toner. And me, I stepped off the board a few months later. Not because I was tired, because my work was done. Peace had returned, order restored, and the only thing we worry about now, whether Greg overcooks the burgers again. Looking back now, it's almost funny. It all started with a plain envelope and a ridiculous number, $8,534.28, supposedly owed in HOA late fees. What it really was an invitation to lift the curtain, follow the money, and expose how a little power in the wrong hands can rot an entire neighborhood from the inside out. This story wasn't just about a Karen with a spreadsheet and a thirst for control. It was about something bigger. Something I think a lot of people in HOA-run neighborhoods, and frankly, any kind of tight-knit community, will understand. The smallest people will do the worst things when they think no one's watching. But here's the good news. Sometimes someone is watching. And sometimes that someone is just a quiet guy with a calculator, a paper trail, and a well-earned sense of righteous anger. Here's what I'd tell you. Document everything. Keep your receipts. Screenshot your emails. Trust your memory, but prove it on paper. Know your rights. Every state has HOA transparency laws. Look them up. Print them out. Find your allies. There's always a Greg or a Linda or a couple neighbors just waiting for someone else to speak up first. And most of all, don't confuse silence for weakness. That's what Karen did, and it cost her everything. We're better now. Not perfect. The sidewalks still crack, and someone keeps putting their trash bins out on Wednesdays instead of Thursdays. Looking at you, Lot 27. But better. The community meetings are honest. The finances are public. And the only late fee we charge these days is if Greg forgets the burger buns again. If you've made it this far, first of all, thank you. This story took 6 chapters, 9,000 words, and one very expensive subpoena to finish. But if even one part of it reminded you of something that happened on your street, have you dealt with a Karen on a power trip? Ever had a crazy HOA fine that made no sense? Or maybe you're on the board yourself and trying to do things the right way? Drop your story in the comments. Really, I read every one of them. Sometimes I save them because who knows? The next wild tale I tell might be yours. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with your neighbor who's this close to running for HOA president just to fix the dog poop signs. Because in every neighborhood, there's always one Karen. And sometimes there's someone ready to stop her. Thanks for being that someone. Until the next story, the guy with the binder.